Chapter 317, Tier 5 Magic Equipment. Chapter 317, Tier 5 Magic Equipment. Over a dozen streaks of light descended upon Temple No. 8's plaza as La Roja and the other Heavenly Boa members arrived. Many players had come to participate in the rookie competition this time, so there was a huge crowd outside every temple in the ancient river secret land's outer perimeter, and Temple No. 8 was no exception. When La Roja's group arrived via teleportation, the many players in the plaza couldn't help but turn to look at them out of curiosity. Crap. Why is Empress Blood Arrow here? Didn't the rumors say that she has stopped competing among the younger generation? Why would she? She looks no more than 25 to me. You talk as if she's very old. Do you not know? It is true that Empress Blood Arrow is still young, but Heavenly Boa has arranged for her to withdraw from the younger generation's competition so that it can better highlight its new once-in-a-century paragon. If not for this arrangement, her name would most likely be among the Battle of Geniuses' top 3. Could Empress Blood Arrow be here to kill the guy who killed Unforgettable Leaf? I don't think so. We're not even in the same plaza as Black Flame. If Empress Blood Arrow really intends on going after Black Flame, she would have gone to Black Flame's plaza instead. That way, she would at least have a chance of getting paired into the same batch as Black Flame during the preliminaries. If she stays in our plaza, she can only meet Black Flame once the top 100 participants have been decided. Many of the various hegemonic powers experts present were surprised to see La Roja appearing in their plaza. At the same time, they couldn't help but wonder why she had come here. It should be known that La Roja was a legendary individual among the Myriad Forest Empire's younger generation. There was no way she would appear in this place without any reason. Subsequently, La Roja and her entourage could be seen approaching a sloppy man lying under the shade of a tree in the plaza. When the dozen or so Heavenly Boa members following La Roja saw this sloppy man, feelings of reverence and joy appeared on their faces. Who's that sloppy berserker? Why are Heavenly Boa's members treating him with such reverence? Maybe they got the wrong person? I saw that guy's performance just now, and he only got through the preliminaries first round because he got lucky and didn't come across anyone throughout the entire round. Otherwise, with the tattered equipment he is wearing, any player he came across could have easily eliminated him. The surrounding crowd grew puzzled when they saw Heavenly Boa's young experts behaving respectfully to the sloppy man. The sloppy man was not only old, looking like he was already nearing his mid-30s, but he also didn't exude the slightest bit of aura. He didn't have any decent weapons and equipment on him, either. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that he was inferior to ordinary Tier 4 players, let alone Heavenly Boa's members. Logically, it should be impossible for the sloppy man to have any connection with Heavenly Boa's young geniuses. Wait, I've seen him before. I think his Markless Blade, one of Heavenly Boa's 7 great paragons. Markless Blade? You mean the expert who caused a huge uproar in the Myriad Forest Empire over a decade ago? No way. No matter how I look at him, he's just an ordinary person. How could he be the same person as the madman who defeated several of the Empire's top paragons back then? When the surrounding crowd looked at the sloppy and laser-looking man sitting before Heavenly Boa's members, they found it hard to believe that this was the same person as the man who had defeated several of the Myriad Forest Empire's top paragons over a decade ago. Moreover, in addition to that achievement, the man known as Markless Blade used to offer guidance to the current Twin Saints Alliance's Saint 3. After Saint 3 rose to fame in the ancient River Kingdom, the two of them had even fought each other in a duel in the Myriad Forest Empire. Unfortunately, the duel wasn't broadcasted to the public, so outsiders only knew the duel had ended in a draw and nothing more. Originally, everyone thought Markless Blade would be a strong contender for the Myriad Forest Empire's top 3 geniuses back then. However, to many players' disappointment, Markless Blade never participated in the Myriad Forest Empire's Battle of Geniuses. Meanwhile, the current Markless Blade was like a completely different person compared to his past self. Not only did he have no vigor whatsoever, but even his life rating felt incredibly low. It was as if his soul had been severely damaged, and he was nowhere near as strong as before. Lord Markless Blade. When the young guardian knight from Heavenly Boa looked at the dull and sloppy man before him, he couldn't help but grow puzzled and worried. The current Markless Blade had no aura whatsoever, and even a youngster like him could see that Markless Blade's posture was full of holes. He found it very hard to believe that such a person had managed to fight the Twin Saints Alliance's Saint 3 to a standstill. "Even you are here, LaRoja?" Markless Blade said as he glanced at LaRoja and the young Guardian Knight who had walked up to him. "It seems those Grand Elders have a job for me, huh? Lord Markless, someone has eliminated Unforgettable Leaf in the first round of the preliminaries, and this has severely affected the guild's plans. Moreover, many of the ancient River Kingdom's powers have started to doubt Heavenly Boa's strength because of this incident. This is going to negatively affect the guild's development plans in the kingdom," the young Guardian Knight said, nodding. "So, the Grand Elders hope you can teach the offender a lesson." "Someone eliminated Unforgettable Leaf in the first round?" Markless Blade's eyes widened a little, a hint of surprise appearing in his turbid eyes. "Is it the ancient River Kingdom's paragons? No, it shouldn't be them. They would have more or less spared him out of respect for Heavenly Boa. Indeed, it isn't them. Instead, the offender is a newcomer to the ancient River Kingdom going by the name of Black Flame," the Guardian Knight explained. "According to the Seven Luminaries Alliance's evaluation, Black Flame's strength is superior to Saint 9 and can possibly rival the current Saint 3. That's interesting. If that guy can rival Saint 3, he can indeed kill Unforgettable Leaf," Markless Blade said, laughing as he got up from the ground. "When I taught Void Talk to that kid, I told him he couldn't rely on it too much since the technique isn't meant to be used defensively but to diversify his attacks instead. It seems he didn't listen to my warning." Markless Blade's words greatly shocked the young Guardian Knight. The young Guardian Knight never thought that Markless Blade was responsible for teaching Unforgettable Leaf the Void Walk he now knew. It should be known that Unforgettable Leaf had relied on Void Walk to rise to prominence in the Myriad Forest Empire. Even the 6th Paragon Impact Giant had to expend much effort to kill Unforgettable Leaf because of this technique. However, the young Guardian Knight couldn't help but inwardly sigh in lamentation a moment later. After all, Markless Blade's former glory was all but gone now. The man even gave off a spiritless and weak feeling. How could he possibly fight against Black Flame in such a state? Meanwhile, Markless Blade smiled when he saw the change in the young Guardian Knight's expression. He could naturally tell what was going through the other party's mind. Suddenly, an overbearing aura erupted from Markless Blade's body, and a mana pillar rose around him, reaching 100 meters into the sky. Then, a powerful mental oppression spread from Markless Blade, causing the young Guardian Knight to stumble 2 steps back, his face pale. At the same time, Markless Blade's tattered chest plate began repairing itself rapidly. In less than 5 seconds, the tattered armor had transformed into a piece of divine armor that exuded endless power. The recovery of this armor also caused Markless Blade's life rating to increase substantially. "This is Tier 5 magic equipment." The young Guardian Knight was astonished as he looked at the divine armor Markless Blade wore. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 318, Uproar in Star Lake. Chapter 318, Uproar in Star Lake. Tier 5 magic equipment. Typically, it was a super special equipment that players could only manage after reaching Tier 5. This was because simply meeting the magic equipment's basic requirements wasn't enough to unleash all of its effects. On top of that, players also needed to fulfill special conditions if they wanted to unleash all of the magic equipment's strength. However, so long as a player could operate a piece of Tier 5 magic equipment normally, it'd be akin to wearing a full set of fragmented legendary equipment. If used by players under Tier 5, it could instantly raise their combat power by 1 whole tier. Only, using Tier 5 magic equipment placed a huge burden on the wearer's concentration. In addition, players also needed to be incredibly skilled at mana manipulation to activate the magic equipment's magic array. These harsh conditions made it so that even among Tier 5 players, few could actually use Tier 5 magic equipment. So, it was even less likely for players beneath Tier 5 to use Tier 5 magic equipment. Yet, now, not only did the Tier 5 magic equipment that had been sitting in Heavenly Boa's treasury finally get to see the light of day again, but it was even being used by Markless Blade, a Tier 4 player. A legend. The young Guardian Knight felt that he had just seen the beginnings of a new legend. With Markless Blade's current strength, he could even try to compete for the top 3 positions of Myriad Forest Empire's Battle of Geniuses, let alone defeat the ancient River Kingdom's Saint 3. He also wouldn't have any trouble getting into the top 20 of the ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition this time. Moreover, this was after taking into account the paragons of other kingdoms and empires secretly participating in the competition. Meanwhile, after revealing his Tier 5 magic equipment, Markless Blade glanced at the young Guardian Knight and proudly said, "Go back and tell those Grand Elders that I will take care of Black Flame during the official competition. I will let everyone in the ancient River Kingdom know the terror of the Heavenly Boa Guild." Markless Blade's words were very domineering, and his voice echoed throughout the entire plaza. Everyone in the plaza heard him loud and clear, and they couldn't help but be shocked by his proclamation. Crap! What's going on? Are we going to see a 1v1 at the apex level? Tier 5 magic equipment. I can't believe someone can use Tier 5 magic equipment at Tier 4. Amazing. This is simply amazing. As expected of the Heavenly Boa Guild, I really didn't think Markless Blade would reappear with such strength after going silent for so many years. You youngsters might not know it, but although Markless Blade has grown a little old in age, he had shocked the entire Myriad Forest Empire during his youth. The number of paragons he had defeated in the Myriad Forest Empire is well over 10. If he hadn't attracted too much attention back then, causing Heavenly Boa to hide him, he could have easily entered the top 5 of the Empire's most recent Battle of Geniuses. Many youths in their early 20s were shocked by the terrifying aura Markless Blade revealed, shocked, and they couldn't help but wonder about his background. Meanwhile, geniuses who belonged to the same generation as Markless Blade began proudly explaining Markless Blade's history to these young geniuses. Before even reaching 20 years of age, Markless Blade had already become famous throughout the Myriad Forest Empire. At 24, he had secured second place in the Myriad Forest Empire's Battle of Geniuses, shocking the entire empire. At 27, he had participated in the 100 Nations Paragon Battle. Unfortunately, he had offended the paragon of an upper-ranking hegemonic power at the time, so the Heavenly Boa Guild had no choice but to hide him and keep him out of the public's eyes. At 30, he joined Star Lake City's Star Lake Legion. Although he was nothing more than an ordinary participant when he joined, he had recently gotten promoted to Vice Commander by Star Lake City's infamous madwoman Red Frost. Moreover, according to rumors, a significant part of why the Twin Saints Alliance's current Saint 3 had managed to gain his current achievements was because of Markless Blade's teachings. Now, after maintaining a low profile for so many years, Markless Blade had finally decided to stop hiding. Meanwhile, not only did he reveal himself to be capable of using a piece of Tier 5 magic equipment, but his epic mana body had also reached the legendary 120% completion rate. His achievements were already close to rivaling the Myriad Forest Empire's current first paragon. Star Lake City, God's Domain Association. Inside an advanced training room on the 500th floor, over 100 talented young men and women were frenziedly training in their attempt to improve their rankings in the City Legion selection. They all hoped they could get a sufficiently high ranking and join the Star Lake Legion as official participants directly. At this time, though, some of these young men and women suddenly stopped their training one after another as they gathered around a beautiful young woman to discuss something. "Chen Hen, have you heard about the news from the Star Lake Legion?" a cute girl who currently ranked in the top 100 of the selection asked as she looked at Thousand Scars. The Legion's Vice Commander Markless Blade appears to have challenged the Black Flame from your miniature ancient world. It seems they will have a one-on-one duel during the official competition of the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition. News about this fight has spread all over Star Lake City already. "I just heard about it as well," a beautiful girl said, nodding. Then, she looked at Thousand Scars and continued, "Chen Hen, I previously heard you mentioning that Black Flame is Zero Wings guild leader. Is he strong?" Almost nobody living in Star Lake City knew about Black Flame. However, so long as one had lived in Star Lake City for some time, they would definitely know about Markless Blade. In the past, Markless Blade was merely an unassuming team leader in the Star Lake Legion. The strength he displayed was also average at best. Yet, as soon as that madwoman became the Star Lake Legion's new commander, she promoted Markless Blade into one of her vice commanders without hesitation. Meanwhile, Markless Blade did not disappoint Red Frost's appointment, either, displaying astonishing combat standards as soon as he got promoted. He could easily rank within the top 5 out of the Star Lake Legion's dozen or so vice commanders. Many powerful corporations had even extended an olive branch to him as a result. At the same time, Markless Blade also became a target for many wealthy young ladies. He also became the prime real estate for the Star Lake Legion's female participants, many women wishing to marry him. Vice Commander Markless Blade is challenging Black Flame? Thousand Scars was dumbfounded by this news. Markless Blade was an individual standing at the top of Star Lake City's social hierarchy. Even though she had already become an internal member of the Paimon conglomerate, before she developed her untapped potential, her status in the greater world would still be vastly inferior to Markless Blade. Not to mention, the Paimon conglomerate had tasked her to join the Star Lake Legion and carry out all of the Legion's activities normally. Meanwhile, she would be nothing more than an ordinary participant when she passed the selection and joined the Legion. As for Black Flame, he was nothing more than a slightly stronger and in her eyes. Although he had earned some fame in the miniature ancient world and even became a titled expert, he should still be vastly inferior to a paragon of the greater god's domain like Markless Blade. No matter how Thousand Scars looked at it, it should be impossible for Black Flame and Markless Blade to have anything to do with each other. Yet, now, she was being told that Markless Blade was challenging Black Flame. These people must be joking with her. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 319, Ancient Rivers Top 100. Chapter 319, Ancient Rivers Top 100 Impossible. Thousand Scars instinctively denied the words of the people around her. You must be mistaken. Black Flame should still be in the miniature ancient world. How could he appear in the greater god's domain's ancient river kingdom? Her homeworld's passage had yet to fully open, so her homeworld and the miniature ancient world remained isolated from the greater god's domain. Meanwhile, before the world passage opened, nobody in the miniature ancient world could leave it. Moreover, it should be known that Black Flame had only appeared in the top of Two Worlds' new God Mode regional dungeon a few days ago and fought against the Paimon conglomerate's meteor. It was because of this fight that he had managed to remain within the top 10 of the miniature ancient world's god-ranked expert list and gained some fame among the greater god's domain's various hegemonic powers. It had only been a few days since then, yet she was supposed to believe that Black Flame had not only traveled to the greater god's domain somehow, but he had even entered the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition and received a challenge from the Markless Blade? Even fantasies wouldn't sound so far-fetched. It shouldn't be a mistake, the cute girl said, shaking her head. The Seven Luminaries Alliance is currently broadcasting the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition. The broadcast of Black Flame's battles has also received the Alliance's confirmation, and over 100,000 people have already paid to watch the broadcast. Everyone is paying close attention to see whether Black Flame can pass the preliminaries 4 rounds and get promoted into the official competition to fight against Vice Commander Markless. Although she did not know how strong Black Flame was exactly, Markless Blade was a big shot in Star Lake City. He was also the target of worship for many young men and women in the city. It was especially so for those seeking to join the Star Lake Legion. Markless Blade was obsessed with training. Apart from participating in resource battles between cities, he would rarely show himself in public. Even his participation in the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition had gone unknown initially. If Markless Blade hadn't taken the initiative to publicly announce his challenge to Black Flame, nobody would have thought that Markless Blade was actually taking part in the rookie competition. Hence, the people seeking to join the Star Lake Legion curiously wondered whether Black Flame was strong or not. If Black Flame was sufficiently strong, they'd be able to observe Markless Blade's strength during the official competition. They could also get to know more about him. That way, they'd have a better chance at joining Markless Blade's battle group after they joined the Star Lake Legion. The Star Lake Legion would recruit 1,000 people through its selection every year. After factoring in some special recruits, a little over 1,000 people would join the Legion each year. After having existed for so many years, The Star Lake Legion possessed a very large number of official participants. Meanwhile, to manage all these participants effectively, the Legion had split its official participants into teams and battle groups. Firstly, players would be split into 3 teams according to their tiers. One team would be for Tier 4, one for Tier 5, and one for Tier 6. Then, each team would be split into multiple battle groups, and these battle groups would be further divided into ordinary battle groups and ace battle groups. Normally, ordinary battle groups would be led by team leader level participants, while the Legion's vice commanders would lead the ace battle groups. Among these 2 types of battle groups, members of ace battle groups would get to enjoy special privileges in the Legion. Their chances of promotion in the Legion were also much higher than members of ordinary battle groups. "There are over 100,000 spectators already," a short-haired beauty exclaimed. "I recall the 7 Luminaries Alliance charges an exorbitant viewing fee. The price to spectate individuals starts at 10 star coins and increases depending on their popularity, and the person being spectated can get 10% of the earnings. If there are 100,000 spectators already, the number of spectators might increase to over 1 million by the time Black Flame makes it into the official competition." In addition to being one of the most ancient powers in the Greater God's Domain, the 7 Luminaries Alliance was also an information broker for all sorts of information. It had branches in the Greater God's Domain's various cities. So long as players paid the Alliance a fee, they could spectate the competitions organized by the Greater God's Domain's various kingdoms and empires. Meanwhile, the players being spectated would receive 10% of the generated profits. Depending on the popularity of the player being spectated, the viewing fee the 7 Luminaries Alliance charged would also differ. For someone as famous as Markless Blade, it wouldn't even be strange for the Alliance to charge double their minimum. Because of this service, many top-tier experts who were famous in the Greater God's Domain didn't even need to join any corporation or power. By simply participating in battles and competitions taking place in the various kingdoms and empires, they could generate enough income to cause even corporations to grow envious. Currently, even though news of Markless Blade's challenge had just spread, over 100,000 people had already bought the viewing rights to watch the upcoming duel. It should be known that this was before Black Flame had even gotten promoted into the official competition. Once Black Flame successfully entered the official competition, the number of spectators could easily exceed 1 million. In that case, Black Flame could earn a minimum of 1 million star coins. For ordinary participants in the Star Lake Legion, it would take them at least 2 or 3 years to earn 1 million star coins. Yet, Black Flame could earn this sum in only one competition. A million star coins a competition? Thousand Scars couldn't help but grow a little envious when she heard the short-haired girl's words. She might receive a lot of resources as an internal member of the Paimon conglomerate, but competition between the conglomerate's internal members was incredibly fierce. She'd have difficulty competing with her peers if she relied solely on those provided resources. If she wanted to stay competitive, she would need to acquire additional resources. However, if she wanted additional resources, she would have to acquire them herself. She was still in her newcomer period in the greater world, so she could use this advanced training room, which helped her improve her physical fitness and combat reactions rapidly, for free. However, once her 1-month newcomer period ended, she would have to pay star coins to use this training room. Not to mention, the advanced training room wasn't even the best training room available in the God's Domain Association. It was only the best training room that she could use for free during her newcomer period. Above advanced training rooms, there were special training rooms, which cost 10,000 star coins per day. There were also meditation rooms that could help improve mental strength, and those similarly cost 10,000 star coins per day to rent. These were places that many of the Paimon conglomerate's top-tier internal geniuses frequented. Some of these geniuses had even built an exclusive meditation room in their homes to have a greater chance of becoming a 3-star mental strength grandmaster and getting promoted into an executive in the Paimon conglomerate. Although the Flower of 7 Sins had invested heavily into her, the organization could only earn a very limited amount of star coins before their homeworld's world passage fully opened. Moreover, the Flower of 7 Sins couldn't afford to invest all of its star coins into her since it still needed to develop its other geniuses. As a result, The amount of star coins she received was nowhere near enough to put her on par with the Paimon conglomerate's top-tier internal geniuses. Although the young masters of many companies and corporations in Star Lake City had sent her gifts, 1 million star coins. This sum was far more than what she had earned throughout her time in Star Lake City. Black Flame simply got lucky, Chen Hen, the cute girl said when she noticed the envious look on Thousand Scars. Then, she smiled and continued, this will be the only time he can earn such a large sum. Another opportunity like this won't come again for him in the future. Once Vice Commander Markless defeats him, nobody will pay attention to him anymore. Moreover, with your talent and beauty, you can easily get the various corporations' young masters to line up before you. Any one of those people is easily 100 times richer than Black Flame. Thousand Scars nodded to the cute girl and stopped paying attention to Black Flame's matter. Instead, she walked into the reaction training room and started another training session. There were countless geniuses and powerhouses in the Greater God's domain. There were also many geniuses and powerhouses who would appear and vanish like shooting stars. Black Flame might have attracted Markless Blade's interest, but his fame would be short-lived. It was simply impossible for a wild expert with no background like Black Flame to make any waves in the ancient River Kingdom and Myriad Forest Empire, places where countless geniuses resided. Only the geniuses and paragons nurtured by the various hegemonic powers could survive long enough to spread their fame across the entire Greater God's domain. While Star Lake City was in an uproar over Markless Blade's challenge, Shifeng's group of 3 was conquering the rookie competition's preliminaries one round after another in the ancient River Secret Land. Early morning the next day, the brutal preliminaries involving the participation of over 1 million geniuses finally ended. Unsurprisingly, Shifeng, Midsummer, and Wu Xiaoxiao passed all 4 rounds of their preliminaries and were successfully promoted into the official competition. As soon as the official competition's 100 participants were decided, they were forcibly teleported to the ancient River Secret Land's central zone. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 320, Kingdom's Apex. Chapter 320, Kingdom's Apex. Ancient River Kingdom, Ancient River Secret Land's central zone, located at the center of the island, was a tall mountain. The top of this mountain was completely shrouded in fog, the fog preventing anyone from seeing what was going on at the mountaintop. There were also tens of thousands of magic arrays flickering in and out of existence on the outer perimeter of this fog. These were not ordinary magic arrays, but rather ancient magic arrays composed of divine runes. Even if 1 million years passed, these magic arrays would remain unchanged without external intervention. At this time, 100 streaks of light converged toward the top of the mountain, disappearing into the fog in the blink of an eye. When these streaks of light landed on the mountaintop, they transformed into the silhouettes of the rookie competition's top 100 participants. Compared to past instances of the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition, many of the top 100 participants this time were new faces. When they arrived at the mountaintop, they looked at their surroundings curiously, and they couldn't help but be shocked by what they saw. The Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition isn't all that worse compared to the Myriad Forest Empire's Battle of Geniuses. Not only did the preliminaries give a bunch of star coins and immortal equipment, but there is even such an amazing place in this secret land's central zone. These technique stele are so ancient and incredible. Are these the rumored ancient stele? The Ancient River Kingdom had a long history, and it was one of the few ancient kingdoms in the Starlight Realm. Yet, the Ancient River Secret Land predated the Ancient River Kingdom, existing long before the kingdom did. It was also shrouded in a layer of mystery, and nobody could uncover its secrets even to this day. However, no matter what secrets the Ancient River Secret Land held, they were bound to be extraordinary. This point could be seen through the fact that the Ancient River Kingdom was named after the Ancient River Secret Land. Although everyone participating in the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition had known beforehand that the Ancient River Secret Land was an extraordinary location, they didn't think it would be to such an extent. For those entering the Ancient River Secret Land's central zone for the first time, apart from those originating from the Ancient River Kingdoms and Myriad Forest Empire's hegemonic powers, Everyone else was greatly shocked when they saw the ancient stone tablets covering their surroundings. It was especially so when they saw the divine runes and images engraved on these stone tablets. Ancient stelae. These were stelae passed down from ancient times, and they recorded the combat techniques and mana techniques of gods. All of these recorded techniques were extraordinary, and many of the techniques currently in circulation were simplified versions developed based on these ancient techniques. The reason these techniques were simplified was that the mana techniques and combat techniques developed by gods were far too complex for most people to learn. Even among Tier 5 NPCs with remarkable intelligence, very few could learn these techniques. Moreover, the complexity of these techniques was not exaggerated in the slightest. Even the most inferior techniques recorded on these ancient stelae were at the level of god-ranked mana techniques and advanced silver combat techniques, while the majority were saint-ranked mana techniques and combat techniques rivaling gold combat techniques. Any player who could successfully learn a gold combat technique would be in existence standing at the apex of God's domain. Even the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers and apex powers would be willing to extend an olive branch to such individuals. Only, in the expansive greater God's domain, experts capable of learning gold combat techniques were incredibly few. Their rarity could basically match that of divine artifacts. Of course, while gold combat techniques were incredibly difficult to learn, a bigger reason there were incredibly few experts who had managed to learn gold combat techniques was that not many powers owned a gold combat technique. Apart from apex powers and a minority of upper-ranking hegemonic powers, other powers did not have any way of letting their members learn gold combat techniques. So, upon seeing the ancient stelae that covered the mountaintop, many of the first-time visitors here couldn't help but grow excited. It was especially so for the various independent experts. This was a learning environment that even the greater God's domain's apex powers would have difficulty providing, let alone the various hegemonic powers. What a bunch of country bumpkins. Do they honestly think they can learn the techniques on these stelae so easily? And without restrictions? Only independent players like them will be so naive. If the techniques here were so easy to acquire, the powers based in the neighboring kingdoms and empires would have long since taken action. There's no way they'd let the ancient river kingdom's powers monopolize everything. Many of the experts originating from hegemonic powers looked at the excited independent experts around them in contempt. The fact that the ancient secret land's central zone housed a large number of ancient stelae was no secret to the surrounding kingdoms and empires' hegemonic powers. Or, more specifically, this was common knowledge among all hegemonic powers in the greater God's domain. Saint-ranked mana techniques and gold combat techniques were highly sought after in the greater God's domain, valued above even legendary weapons. If there existed a place with many pseudo-gold combat techniques and saint mana techniques available for players to learn, the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers and apex powers would have fought to occupy it without hesitation. There was no way the ancient river kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers could retain control over the ancient river secret land. While the various independent players were in or over the ancient stelae, Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao had their attention focused on something else. Rather than look at the ancient stelae, they looked at the various parties protected by magic barriers around them with ugly complexions. Why are there so many experts from other kingdoms and empires in the rookie competition this time? Wu Xiaoxiao's expression grew solemn as she looked at the several parties around her. Although she knew that the ancient river kingdom's rookie competition was a gathering of experts, most of the participating experts typically originated from the kingdom. Yet, the 3 parties around them were all made up of experts originating from hegemonic powers of other kingdoms and empires. None of them were players from the ancient river kingdom. Moreover, every one of these players possessed great fame, so much so that even she, someone who had only arrived in the ancient river kingdom recently, knew about them. The Red Star Kingdom's glorious mantra. The Iron Lion Kingdom's martial quad beast. The Myriad Forest Empire's silent saintess. Midsummer felt her mind exploding when she saw the leaders of the 3 surrounding parties. Are we really taking part in the ancient river kingdom's rookie competition? Glorious Mantra was a young male cursemancer, Martial Quad Beast was a muscular male summoner, and Silent Saintess was a masked young woman. These 3 people were all titled experts recognized by the 7 Luminaries Alliance. Every one of them possessed fame rivaling the current Saint 3. It was just that these people were no longer part of the younger generation. Instead, they were older generation paragons who had retired from the younger generation 3 or 4 years ago. It was normally impossible to see all these veteran paragons gather in the same place. Yet, this impossible situation had happened right before her very eyes. At this time, Midsummer wasn't the only one surprised by this situation. Even the players who had paid star coins to spectate the broadcast of Shifeng's battle were dumbfounded. How was this supposed to be the ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition? This participant lineup could already compete with the annual 100 Nations Paragon Battles participant lineup. While Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao were scrutinizing the players around them, these players had similarly focused their attention on Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao's party of 3. Only, their eyes weren't focused on Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao. Instead, they were focused on Shifeng. Before Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao could snap out of their daze, a system notification entered their ears, signaling the start of the competition. Immediately afterward, the barriers protecting the various parties disintegrated simultaneously, and a suffocating silence descended on the mountain top. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 321, 6 Great Divine Sets. Chapter 321, 6 Great Divine Sets Regional System Announcement. The Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition has officially begun. All participants are encouraged to collect as many heroic spirit remnants as possible. The first 10 participants to collect 100 heroic spirit remnants will be able to enter the ancient river's heart. The top 20 participants will receive the qualifications to participate in the official phase of the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition. Regional System Announcement. Participants will be resurrected in their respective temple plazas in the event of death in the ancient river secret land. Participants who died will not lose any experience points but will drop half of their collected heroic spirit remnants. Regional System Announcement. If there are fewer than 10 contestants who have collected 100 heroic spirit remnants after 3 natural days, the top 10 participants will be forcibly teleported to the ancient river's heart, and the top 20 participants will be automatically awarded the qualifications to participate in the official phase of the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition. The Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition? Realization dawned on Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao when they saw the system announcements. At the same time, they experienced unprecedented pressure. Some corporations and conglomerates would occasionally host invitational competitions in God's domain to recruit geniuses and powerhouses or to help them with some matters. Meanwhile, an invitational competition hosted by the Galaxy Conglomerate was one that any player operating in the Starlight Realm would find too tempting to refuse. So, the fact that the rookie competition's top 20 rewards included the qualifications to participate in the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition would undoubtedly increase the competitiveness of the top 100 participants, thereby increasing the difficulty of getting into the rookie competition's top 20. Not to mention, their goal was to get into the top 10. To make matters worse, their party's starting location was right next to 3 Paragon-led parties. This was horrendous luck. Currently, Shifeng's name had already spread across the entire ancient river secret land because of his victory against Unforgettable Leaf. Everyone also knew Markless Blade was looking to challenge Shifeng to a duel. These were more than enough to prove Shifeng's strength. So, if other parties were to come across their party of 3 in the official phase of the rookie competition, they would definitely prioritize killing Shifeng, reducing the competition they needed to face in trying to get into the top 20. After all, not only was Shifeng a powerful expert, but he was also an expert without any background in the greater God's domain. They could kill him without worrying about any potential repercussions. However, despite receiving the scrutiny of the 3 surrounding parties, Shifeng behaved as if he did not notice their gazes, a smile forming on his face as he looked at the system announcements. This is interesting. The Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition was a major opportunity in the Starlight Realm. If he remembered correctly, the Galaxy Conglomerate was inviting so many Tier 4 experts because Eternity, one of the 6 great divine sets of legends, had appeared in the greater God's domain. A divine set referred to a divine artifact ranked set equipment in God's domain. Naturally, a divine set's value was much greater than individual divine artifacts. Meanwhile, among the divine sets that existed in the greater God's domain were the 6 great divine sets. Every one of these 6 sets came with countless legends. According to rumors, should a player manage to gather a complete set, they would become invincible in the greater God's domain. To Shifeng, though, this wasn't a rumor since he had personally seen a divine set in action. Of course, the divine set he saw back then wasn't one of the 6 great divine sets, but a normal divine set instead. It was also the only divine set owned by the Apex Power Demon's Gate. Even though it was only a normal divine set, it was enough to deter other Apex powers from casually provoking Demon's Gate. This divine set was also the main reason Shifeng had a headache dealing with Demon's Gate. Anyway, the Galaxy Conglomerate had happened across a clue leading to the Eternity set, one of the 6 great divine sets, during his previous life. Back then, the Conglomerate had invited many Tier 4 paragons from all over the Starlight Realm. It had even gone as far as to invite the Tier 4 monsters of other realms to ensure the success of its operation. However, for some reason outside of Shifeng's knowledge, the Galaxy Conglomerate's operation failed. Moreover, it was a catastrophic failure that resulted in severe losses for all participants. Out of the various consequences the participants suffered, the loss of their accounts was the mildest of penalties. Some participants even suffered severe damage to their minds, resulting in their mental strength plummeting. These participants had also never managed to recover fully, resulting in their permanent separation from God's domain's apex. This incident had shaken the entire greater God's domain, and everybody knew about it back then. Shifeng never thought that he would actually make it in time for this event in this life. During his previous life, he had only heard about the event from others. Moreover, he had only heard about it after the Galaxy Conglomerate's operation had failed spectacularly. As for the Eternity set itself, the original owner of the set had used it to heavily damage the ancient abyssal god. It was something Shifeng didn't even dare to dream of owning during his previous life. So, he never thought he would get such an opportunity in this life. However, Shifeng quickly calmed his agitated heart and turned his gaze to the peak of the mountain, which was also the location of the ancient river's heart. He could feel one of the 7 luminaries' codex's fragments there. Although he didn't know which fragment resided there, it didn't matter. So long as he could get his hands on one and recover a portion of the 7 luminaries' codex's power, he would have enough power to stand at the apex of the greater God's domain. The codex could even offer him significant help in acquiring the Eternity set. Brother Black Flame, I get the feeling that these 3 parties hold significant hostility toward us. Moreover, it feels like they are looking to attack us together. Should we retreat for now? Midsummer whispered to Shifeng. While it was logical for participants in the official competition to prioritize killing the strongest competitors, the 3 parties around them behaved as if they had discussed targeting their party of 3 beforehand. As soon as the magic barriers had disappeared, the 3 parties swiftly moved to block 3 of the safest paths leading out of the starting point. Although there were several other paths that could be taken, these paths had at least 10 level 140, Tier 4 heroic spirits patrolling them, so they were essentially impassable. If these 3 parties hadn't discussed working together beforehand, there was no way they could have moved so neatly and perfectly. Your hunch isn't wrong. They are indeed planning to target us together, Shifeng said as he looked at the 3 parties with a faint smile. Or, more specifically, they're trying to keep us from leaving. Keep us from leaving? Midsummer couldn't help but look at the 3 parties in surprise and confusion. What exactly did their party do to warrant 3 paragon-led parties of other nations to target them together? Not even the Myriad Forest Empire's first paragon would receive such a treatment. While Midsummer was feeling confused over this situation, Marshal Quadbeast looked at Shifeng's party and said, "By the request of Heavenly Boa's Markless Blade, I will have to ask you 3 to wait here for some time. This Markless Blade fellow must hold a lot of influence if he can get your 3 parties to sell him a favor," Shifeng exclaimed, feeling a little surprised as he looked at the leaders of the 3 parties. The Red Star Kingdom's glorious mantra, the Iron Lion Kingdom's Marshal Quadbeast, the Myriad Forest Empire's silent saintess, These were all famous individuals in the surrounding kingdoms and empires. Even when the guild leaders of hegemonic powers tried to hire them as helpers, these three turned down the offers they received without hesitation. Yet, now, they had agreed to take on Markless Blade's commission. This was truly surprising. Young man, you have only arrived in the greater god's domain recently, so there are still many things you do not understand, Marshal Quad Beast, the oldest out of the three parties' leaders, said. You might be confident in your strength, but you have offended someone you should not offend. So, you will have to pay the price now. What if I insist on leaving? Shifeng asked as he calmly looked at Marshal Quad Beast. However, as soon as Shifeng finished speaking, a slopper-looking man with an astonishingly powerful aura suddenly jumped down from a nearby cliff and landed directly in front of Shifeng's party of three. I'm afraid that's not up to you to decide. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 322, Sacred Armament. Chapter 322, Sacred Armament. As soon as the sloppy man jumped down from the cliff, everyone present couldn't help but turn to look at him. The sloppy man in question looked like he was in his mid-30s. He wore a dark grey chest plate that had magic runes engraved on it. His long hair was left scattered, making him look like a savage. Yet, despite his messy appearance, nobody present could ignore him because of his domineering words and, more importantly, aura that rivaled that of Tier 5 legendary monsters. Meanwhile, this sloppy man was none other than Markless Blade, one of the Heavenly Boa Guild's 7 great paragons. How did he arrive so quickly? Midsummer and Wuxiaoxiao grew shocked and worried when they saw Markless Blade. The ancient river Secret Land's central zone might only be limited to the peak of the central mountain, but the zone was by no means small. It could easily allow 1,000 players to roam freely without meeting one another. Normally, 100 players split into several dozen parties would have a very low chance of coming across one another in such a vast area. Yet, even though only a few dozen seconds had passed since the official competition began, Markless Blade had already reached them. While it was obvious he had learned of their party of three's starting location through his connections, the fact that he managed to reach them from his starting location so quickly was simply astonishing. Now, because of this situation, their party would have to fight against Markless Blade before they could even kill any Tier 4 heroic spirits. If they ended up getting killed by Markless Blade, they would have to say goodbye to getting into the top 20, let alone getting into the top 10 and entering the ancient river's heart. I can't believe Markless Blade managed to improve so much in the time we haven't met. A Tier 5 magic equipment truly is incredible, the Red Star Kingdom's glorious mantra said, a hint of dread appearing in his eyes after he scrutinized Markless Blade. I doubt my odds of winning against him reaches even 20% now. Rumors say that the Azura Sword Emperor is stronger than even Saint 9 and rivals the current Saint 3. I wonder how much strength he can get Markless Blade to use, the Iron Lion Kingdom's Marshal Quad Beast wondered, his eyes brimming with fighting spirit. It'd be great if he can get Markless Blade to use all of his strength. Although I feel a little sorry for the Azura Sword Emperor, for the sake of ranking in the top 20 and having a better chance against Markless Blade in the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition afterward, I can only have him test Markless Blade's current standards, the Myriad Forest Empire's Silent Saintess said, her lips curling into a faint smile. At the same time, her eyes scrutinized Markless Blade's every move, eager to see how strong the berserker had become already. Meanwhile, this sudden development had also caused the number of players spectating Shifeng's broadcast to skyrocket, going from 300,000 to 600,000 in the blink of an eye. Moreover, the number of spectators was still rapidly increasing as time passed, showing no signs of slowing down. Crap! What's going on? The official competition's first clash is going to be an apex battle? Markless Blade is incredible. He actually got Glorious Mantra, Marshal Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess to help him. With this, even getting into the top 5 won't be a problem for him. The players watching Shifeng's broadcast grew ecstatic at the sudden development. It was especially so for the players currently in the top 1,000 of the Star Lake Legion selection. They didn't think Markless Blade's influence would be so great that he could get 3 paragons to help him. Thus far, None of the myriad forest empire's paragons have shown such influence. While everyone had their attention focused on Markless Blade's gaze stayed on Shifeng from start to end, never deviating in the slightest. Azura Sword Emperor Black Flame? It seems I have underestimated you before, Markless Blade said, a flash of admiration appearing in his eyes after he was done scrutinizing Shifeng. He could tell that Shifeng's basic attributes were not at all inferior to his current basic attributes. No wonder you managed to defeat Unforgettable Leaf so easily. Both your physique and mana are at the Tier 5 standard. You can already be considered a pseudo-Tier 5 with such strength, and getting into the top 10 shouldn't be out of the question. You indeed have some qualifications to be arrogant. Qualifications to be arrogant. Shifeng chuckled when he heard Markless Blade's evaluation of him. I'm afraid I am still no match for you in this regard. Few people can put on a Tier 5 magic equipment even at Tier 5, yet you've already fused with one. Aside from the lack of Tier 5 skills, you are already no different from a Tier 5 player. Moreover, I doubt that a piece of Tier 5 magic equipment is all that Heavenly Boa has given you, right? There were countless geniuses in the greater God's domain, but geniuses who could grow to great heights were monopolized by the various hegemonic powers. As for independent experts, their chances of achieving true greatness in God's domain did not reach 1%. As for why that was the case, it was because of the difference in weapons and equipment. Independent experts needed to rely on themselves to get weapons and equipment. However, experts belonging to the various hegemonic powers could rely on weapons and equipment accumulated by their predecessors. They could easily get their hands on fragmented legendary and legendary items without having to invest much time and effort or rely on luck. Because of this, the gap between the various hegemonic powers experts and independent experts would only grow bigger and bigger as time passed. Or, more specifically, how were independent experts supposed to even catch up to the various hegemonic powers experts if they couldn't even get weapons and equipment of passing quality? You are correct. This piece of Tier 5 magic equipment isn't my only trump card, Markless Blade said, a long saber appearing in his hand before anyone realized it. The saber in Markless Blade's hand was as long as he was tall. The blade of the weapon was made of unknown crimson metal. As soon as Markless Blade equipped it, the intensity of his aura increased significantly, and it felt as if he had become a completely different person. At this moment, every one of his movements could cause the space around him to tremble and destabilize. That is, the God Annihilator. The Myriad Forest Empire's 53rd sacred armament. Are you kidding me? Heavenly Boa actually gave him the God Annihilator. It seems competing with him is going to be impossible. Glorious mantras, martial quadbeasts, and silent Saintess's eyes widened when they saw the long saber in Markless Blade's hand. All kingdoms and empires in the greater God's domain had their own sacred armament list. These lists were used to record the strongest weapons within their respective borders. Meanwhile, the God Annihilator was a terrifying saber recorded in the Myriad Forest Empire's sacred armament list. It should be known that the various kingdoms and empires in the greater God's domain possessed many fragmented legendary weapons and legendary weapons. These were all accumulated over many years. So, for a fragmented legendary weapon to be capable of ranking 53rd in the Myriad Forest Empire's sacred armament list, it was bound to have some aspects that allowed it to surpass legendary weapons. Meanwhile, the God Annihilator was indeed superior to legendary weapons in certain aspects. Even though it was only a fragmented legendary weapon, it could exhibit power rivaling legendary weapons. One slash from it was enough to reap the life out of a player's soul. More importantly, the God Annihilator had a passive skill that prevented players from blocking its attacks with a shield. This made it an excellent weapon to harvest players. With the combination of Tier 5 magic equipment and the Myriad Forest Empire's 53rd sacred armament, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Markless Blade was invincible among Tier 4 players. Unforgettable Leaf had previously used the Void Walk I taught him against you. I wonder if you can defend against my Void Walk? After saying so, Markless Blade vanished from where he stood. Immediately afterward, an imperceptibly thin tear in space rapidly extended from his original location to Shifeng. Although the spatial tear was incredibly thin, It had an incredible height that extended from the ground all the way into the sky, and it shattered everything in its path. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 323, Sword and Saber. Chapter 323, Sword and Saber. When the world-dividing spatial tear rapidly extended toward Shifeng, whether it was the three other parties nearby or the spectating players outside, everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The space within the ancient river secret land was incredibly stable. It was especially so for the central zone's space. The space was so stable here that Tier 3 players would find themselves immobilized completely. Because of the space's stability, destructive attacks that could normally create spatial tears measuring several hundred meters in length couldn't even create a spatial tear over a dozen meters in the ancient river secret land's central zone. Yet, now, not only did Markless Blade exhibit phenomenal destructive power with his one attack, but he had also exhibited incredible mastery over the Void Walk technique. At this moment, let alone the three spectating paragons, even Shifeng, the target of Markless Blade's attack, could not detect Markless Blade's presence in the slightest. It was as if the berserker had vanished into thin air, disappearing without a trace. As expected of the god Annihilator, its speed and power are already close to matching legendary weapons, Shifeng thought, a smile forming on his face as he looked at the numerous spatial tears extending toward him. These spatial tears carried incredible power, and even one of them was enough to instantly kill the average Tier 4 player. But between my sword and your saber, I wonder which is stronger. Immediately, Shifeng unsheathed the Winter of Eternal Night and brandished it against the oncoming spatial tears. Swords transmigration. Boom, boom, boom. Sparks and explosions filled the battlefield as the Winter of Eternal Night collided with the spatial tears attacking Shifeng from multiple directions. Over 100 exchanges had taken place in the blink of an eye, the shockwaves from the clashes causing the surrounding space to crack like tempered glass. The surrounding terrain was also deformed beyond recognition. From an outsider's perspective, the clash between the inconspicuous swordsman and sloppy berserker didn't look like a clash between players at all. Instead, it looked more like a brawl between two natural disasters. A moment later, Markless Blade suddenly reappeared in everyone's view. However, before anyone realized it, nearly half of his HP bar was missing. As for Shifeng, he had also lost a little over 20% of his HP. At a glance, it was obvious who had the advantage in raw power. You blocked all of my Void Walk attacks. What about this move, then? After saying so, Markless Blade abruptly slammed the god Annihilator into the ground, causing the ground to sink and creating a brilliant mana pillar that rapidly expanded out from him. Universal Destruction. This was an additional skill that came with the god Annihilator. It allowed the god Annihilator's wielder to exhibit their strength to the extreme, instantly increasing the effect of the wielder's strength by 5 times for one attack that could reduce a 100-yard radius into nothingness. You want to fight using brute force? Shifeng took a deep breath as he looked at the rapidly expanding mana pillar. Then, he gripped the Winter of Eternal Night with both hands and executed a downward slash. Demon God's Armament. Radiant Night. Subsequently, Shifeng's mana experienced a qualitative improvement, and matching divine runes appeared on his weapon and equipment one after another, the runes increasing the effects of his weapon and equipment by 100%. Immediately afterward, darkness bloomed from the Winter of Eternal Night, devouring everything in its path. Boom. When light and darkness collided, the thick fog covering the sky thinned slightly, and a continuous explosion echoed throughout the mountaintop. Every player in the central zone felt the powerful explosion, and many couldn't help but look toward the source of this explosion. He didn't die. Markless Blade revealed a look of surprise when he saw that Shifeng had over 60% of his HP remaining. Universal Destruction was the strongest move that came with the god Annihilator. When paired with his Tier 5 magic equipment, he could send even Tier 5 legendary monsters of the same level flying. If a Tier 5 metric tons tried to receive this move without any life-saving skills active, there was a real chance they could get killed from full HP. Yet, Shifeng, a Tier 4 Sword Emperor, had received this move without dying. His strength attribute could practically rival Tier 5 Berserkers. Markless Blade wasn't the only one surprised by this outcome. When Glorious Mantra, Martial Quadbeast, and Silent Saintess saw that Shifeng remained alive and healthy, they couldn't help but gasp, their minds failing to understand how Shifeng had survived Markless Blade's attack. Isn't he only wearing dark gold immortal equipment? How can he match Markless Blade's Tier 5 magic equipment and God Annihilator? Martial Quadbeast had trouble keeping his jaw from hanging when he saw that Shifeng had over half his HP remaining. Martial Quadbeast had fought Markless Blade when the latter had his Tier 5 magic equipment equipped in the past, so he knew that Markless Blade's strength had already reached an unbelievable level for a Tier 4 player. Even the superior mythic-ranked ancient bone dragon he had summoned using a Tier 4 curse was sent flying over a dozen yards when it ate a direct attack from Markless Blade. It should be known that the ancient bone dragon had strength rivaling Tier 5 legendary monsters. A normal attack from it could shatter a basic city's defensive magic array in one hit. If a Tier 4 metric tons tried to block its attack without a life-saving skill, they would get killed in one hit. Yet, the ancient bone dragon was sent flying when it tried to block Markless Blade's attack. Now that Markless Blade had received the God Annihilator, a weapon known for its strength, from Heavenly Boa, his strength had undoubtedly reached an even more frightening level. Against Markless Blade's universal destruction, Martial Quadbeast doubted he could survive the attack even if he activated a life-saving skill. Yet, Shifeng had blocked the attack without any life-saving skills and survived. It should be because of his sword. He only has a set of dark gold immortal equipment. It is logically impossible for him to match Markless Blade's basic attributes. The only explanation is that his sword offers a lot more strength than the God Annihilator, Glorious Mantra said as he looked at the black long sword Shifeng wielded. But God Annihilator's strength bonus is already extraordinary. Could his long sword be on par with the myriad Forest Empire's top 20 sacred armaments? The players spectating the battle from outside the competition venue also looked at Shifeng's Winter of Eternal Night with eyes full of curiosity and greed. Any weapon capable of entering the sacred armament list of any country in the Greater God's domain would either be a legendary weapon or a fragmented legendary weapon that rivaled legendary weapons in certain aspects. Meanwhile, every one of these weapons was treated like a precious baby by the various hegemonic powers. Even the various hegemonic powers' executives would need permission from their respective Grand Elders before using these weapons. After all, weapons that had reached the level of sacred armaments could be of great help to even Tier 6 players. Rather than let Tier 4 and Tier 5 players use them, it'd be much more effective to let a Tier 6 powerhouse equip it. Only a pseudo-upper-ranking hegemonic power like Heavenly Boa would be willing to let a Tier 4 paragon equip such a weapon. The average hegemonic power absolutely wouldn't dare to do such a thing. After all, not only was this a waste of opportunity, but there was also a great risk of the weapon being snatched. Weapons at the sacred armament caliber could be sold for astronomical prices. They were so valuable that even Tier 5 and Tier 6 experts would be willing to disregard the rules set by the various powers. While everyone was talking about Shifeng's Winter of Eternal Night, Shifeng looked at his remaining HP before glancing at Markless Blade, who was getting ready to attack him again. Then, Shifeng released the Winter of Eternal Night, letting it merge with the void. Immediately afterward, 9 frost blades materialized around Markless Blade, gradually lingering around him like satellites. I've seen your saber already. Now, it's time for you to see my sword. World of Frost. Ninefold Swords Orbit. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 324, Tier 5. Chapter 324, Tier 5. Each of the 9 frost swords possessed 120% of Shifeng's strength. Under the enhancement of Demon God's armament and world creation, each frost sword could execute swords orbit flawlessly and create dozens of stars that carried power at the Tier 5 standard. When these stars intersected, they caused the space around them to tremble. The 9 frost swords attacked Markless Blade from multiple directions simultaneously, forming a tight network of hundreds of stars. There was no room whatsoever for Markless Blade to carry out evasive maneuvers. When high-tiered players in God's domain wished to quickly decide on the outcome of a duel, there were generally only two methods they could employ. The first method was to defeat the opponent with overwhelming power. So long as one had an absolute advantage in strength, one's opponent would be incapable of defending against one's attacks. It was a crude yet effective method. It was also the method high-tiered players used most often when dealing with lower-tiered players. The second method was to launch attacks at extraordinary speeds. If one could overwhelm the reaction speed of one's opponent with enough attacks, even if each attack wasn't exceptionally strong, so long as the attacks could do some damage, one could quickly end the duel. The Winter of Eternal Night was never a long sword focused on raw power. Instead, its strong suit was attacking at high frequencies. In his current state, Shifeng could execute several hundred attacks simultaneously. This was already well beyond the number of attacks a Tier 4 player could react to simultaneously. Meanwhile, as soon as Shifeng executed his ninefold sword's orbit, Markless Blade immediately felt the threat of death looming over him. He could sense that if he allowed around a dozen of these stars to hit him, even with the Tier 5 magic equipment protecting him, he would die nonetheless. Markless Blade was honestly shocked by this development. He never thought Shifeng could control 9 individual weapons to such a masterful degree. It was common for players to control multiple weapons summoned via skills or spells in God's domain. However, doing so would usually reduce the amount of control they could exert over each weapon. To manipulate multiple weapons normally was an incredibly challenging feat, and the difficulty would increase exponentially with each additional weapon. Normally, a Tier 4 magical class player could easily launch over 100 magic projectiles. However, while launching so many attacks might make for a spectacular sight, the player would only have full control over 3 or 4 of these projectiles. As for the other projectiles, the player could only have them move in a simple trajectory. As a result, these other projectiles were very predictable and could be easily dodged. However, it was a different story for Shifeng's frost swords. All 9 frost swords moved as if Shifeng was wielding them in person. When targeted by the 9 frost swords, Markless Blade felt as if he was being attacked by 9 Shifengs simultaneously. Rampaging Blade. At this moment, Markless Blade finally stopped holding back. After letting out a loud roar, he instantly split into 4 copies of himself and executed a peerless slash, shattering the space before him and sending countless spatial fragments flying in multiple specific directions. Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess were deeply shocked when they saw this scene. For Tier 4 titled experts like themselves, shattering space wasn't a difficult feat. However, shattering space and having the resulting spatial fragments group up and move in groups like several dozen weapons was something they couldn't do. This feat required an unbelievable amount of control over one's strength and the void. Subsequently, the weapons made of spatial fragments collided with the stars in the air, every collision stirring up a powerful spatial storm. Over 100 collisions took place in the blink of an eye, the resulting explosions and shockwaves making it feel as if over a dozen great wizards were bombarding each other with spells in mid-air. At this moment, if any Tier 4 player were to jump into the air without taking any defensive measures, they would instantly be bombarded into smithereens. Even Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess had trouble keeping up with the flurry of exchanges taking place in mid-air. They would die without question if they were to abruptly join this fight without any life-saving skills active. After several hundred explosions erupted in mid-air, the sky had already transformed into a pitch-black void. However, at this time, Markless Blade could no longer keep up with the 9 frost swords' attacks. Immediately, the several hundred stars created by the 9 frost swords bypassed Markless Blade's spatial fragments and threatened to attack Markless Blade directly. Markless Blade remained unfazed even in the face of the approaching stars. After letting out a shout, he willed his 3 doppelgangers to gather around him with their sabers held in a defensive stance. Immediately afterward, magic runes appeared on the doppelgangers' bodies, the runes forming a translucent mana barrier around them. When Shifeng saw a defensive barrier suddenly forming around Markless Blade's 3 doppelgangers, he reacted instantly and switched his manipulation method on the spot. Suddenly, the dozen stars closest to reaching Markless Blade grouped up into pairs and merged, forming 6 stars of greater radiance. Then, these 6 stars bombarded markless blade's defensive barrier one after another. Boom! The defensive barrier mitigated the first 4 stars without fail. However, when the 5th star landed, the barrier shattered. Then, the 6th star landed on the doppelganger directly in front of markless blade, the impact sending the doppelganger and markless blade himself flying several dozen yards back. Eventually, markless blade and his doppelganger crash-landed on the ground, their impact shattering the ground and forming a large crater. Subsequently, the doppelganger disappeared, revealing markless blade's body. After receiving Shifeng's attack, markless blade had lost another 1/3 of his HP, and there was a visible sword mark in his Tier 5 magic equipment. Crap! How is that even possible? Are those two really just Tier 4 players? The players spectating the broadcast of the fight were dumbfounded. Even though the 2 fighters were a swordsman and a berserker, the exchange between the two felt like an exchange between a dozen great wizards. Moreover, even though Shifeng's and markless blade's attack rates were already beyond the reaction speed of Tier 4 players, the two of them could not only keep up with each other's attacks, but they could also alter their attack methods halfway through their attacks. Markless blade failed to keep up. When Glorious Mantra, Martial Quadbeast, and Silent Saintus saw that markless blade had lost a lot of HP, their expressions changed, and they could no longer remain calm like before. If the 3 of them were standing in Shifeng's shoes, they definitely wouldn't be able to react to markless blade's sudden transition into a defensive stance. Yet, Shifeng had not only reacted to the sudden transition, but he had even merged his attacks on the spot to further strengthen them. His reaction speed was simply monstrous. This Black Flame guy is amazing. He took away 1/3 of Vice Commander Markless' HP in one move. How absurd is his reaction speed? Don't tell me Vice Commander Markless is going to lose. Star Lake City spectating players never thought that the mighty markless blade would be put at a disadvantage in a fight against a player with little to no fame in the greater god's domain. Moreover, markless blade lost 1/3 of his HP to Shifeng in one move. No matter how they looked at it, markless blade's defeat was inevitable. However, just when everyone thought markless blade was slated for defeat, markless blade suddenly patted the sword mark on his chest plate and revealed an excited smile. Immediately afterward, his aura skyrocketed in intensity yet again, causing Martial Quadbeast and the other spectating players nearby to take a step back in shock and fear. Wonderful! This is truly wonderful. Markless blade suddenly laughed, the combination of his ruffled hair and cackling making him look even more like a savage. Then, he looked at Shifeng ecstatically and said, "I really want to thank you. If you didn't make me feel the threat of death, my concentration would have remained stuck at the limit of Tier 4 until I got promoted. I also wouldn't be able to fully exhibit my Tier 5 magic equipment strength at Tier 4 as I can now." When the players rooting for markless blade heard the man's words, they couldn't help but grow excited. Tier 5 magic equipment. If a Tier 4 player could fully exhibit a piece of Tier 5 magic equipment strength, this player would be able to reach the Tier 5 standard directly. At that point, not only would they have Tier 5 basic attributes and physique, but they would also have access to the Tier 5 magic equipment's Tier 5 additional skills. With this sudden development, there was a very real possibility that markless blade could compete for first place in the rookie competition. Black Flame. I admit your attack frequency is incredible. If I am only at the Tier 4 standard, I definitely wouldn't be your match, markless blade said, smiling as he looked at Shifeng. But it's over now. I'll let you know what a true difference in strength is. After saying so, markless blade brandished his saber, sending several hundred spatial blades flying at Shifeng. Markless blade's spatial blades outnumbered even the stars formed by Shifeng's ninefold sword's orbit by over 100. Moreover, the strength these spatial blades carried was superior to that of Shifeng's stars. However, Shifeng did not look surprised even when he went up against these several hundred spatial blades. Instead, he calmly said, "Do you really think you can beat me just because you've reached Tier 5? As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, a dazzling brilliance suddenly burst from the winter of eternal night, and an indescribable power flowed into Shifeng's body. Godslayer. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 325. U2? Chapter 325. U2? TL notes, changing Ninefold Sword's orbit to Ninefold Sword's orbit. When Shifeng activated Godslayer, the mana around him underwent a dramatic transformation and formed a mana pillar exceeding 500 meters. At the same time as the mana pillar appeared, the projection of the illusory world centered around Shifeng became clearer. Originally, the illusory world was at 95% transparency. Now, its transparency had gone down to 80%. The area covered also increased from a 100-yard radius to a 300-yard radius, and the influence it had on the greater god's domain strengthened significantly. These abrupt changes shocked the players watching the broadcast. A mana pillar that's 500 meters tall? Even if he has a 120% epic mana body, shouldn't the maximum height only be 100 meters? Don't tell me he has also reached Tier 5. That's not right. There are no changes to his aura, meaning his basic attributes and physique have not improved. If he reached the Tier 5 standard, there's no way his aura will remain the same. But if he's not at Tier 5, how is his mana pillar so tall? Shifeng's mana pillar was like the midday sun, its appearance instantly increasing the brightness of the entire mountaintop. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked when they saw this phenomenon. It was common knowledge that when a Tier 4 player developed their epic mana body to the legendary 120% completion rate, the mana pillar they could produce would reach up to 100 meters. A Tier 4 player's mana pillar reaching 500 meters was simply unheard of in God's domain. While the spectating crowd had fallen into shock and confusion, Shifeng's 9 frost swords suddenly appeared next to him and moved to meet the several hundred oncoming spatial blades. Then, the 9 frost swords created a galaxy of stars. Ninefold Sword's orbit. The galaxy of stars stopped the several hundred blades dead in their tracks, preventing them from getting within 30 yards of Shifeng. Compared to before, the defensive network Shifeng formed with his Ninefold Sword's orbit had become significantly stronger. He blocked everything. What did he do? Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess gaped in shock when they saw Shifeng standing in midair intact. Markless Blade had already gained complete control over his Tier 5 magic equipment. Whether it was basic attributes, physique, or skills, he already had everything a Tier 5 player would have. Logically, Shifeng should be utterly incapable of defending against Markless Blade's rampaging blade. After all, whether it was in terms of attack count or strength, Markless Blade's rampaging blade had already surpassed Shifeng's Ninefold Sword's orbit. Yet, now, Markless Blade had failed to even damage Shifeng, let alone heavily injure or kill him. As for Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao, they were similarly shocked when they saw this outcome. Brother Black Flame is amazing. He can even hold his ground against one of Heavenly Boa's 7 great paragons. With this, even Saint 3 won't have any leverage over Brother Black Flame. Midsummer exclaimed. Markless Bad was Heavenly Boa's 7 great paragons. Although he ranked near the bottom of the 7, he was still a paragon rivaling Saint 3. Not to mention, now that Markless Blade could exhibit 100% of his Tier 5 magic equipment strength, he could even compete for the rookie competition's number 1 position. As for Markless Blade, who had just gained full control over his Tier 5 magic equipment, he, too, was shocked by this outcome. Have you also reached Tier 5? Markless Blade asked, his mind full of doubts and confusion about the strength and reaction speed Shifeng had just displayed. Setting aside Shifeng's strength, just the fact that Shifeng could keep up with his Tier 5 attack frequency was already plenty unbelievable. The biggest factor that separated Tier 4 and Tier 5 players in God's domain was reaction speed. This difference led to a situation where even if a Tier 4 player had similar basic attributes as a Tier 5 player, the former still wouldn't be a match for the latter. Meanwhile, after Markless Blade gained full control of his Tier 5 magic equipment, his reaction speed had already entered the Tier 5 threshold. So, a Tier 4 expert should be helpless against his maximum attack frequency. Yet, Shifeng had blocked all of his attacks. Aside from Shifeng having a legendary weapon, the only other explanation Markless Blade could think of for this situation was that Shifeng had similarly crossed into the Tier 5 threshold as he did. Legendary weapons were incredibly precious even to the various hegemonic powers. Not even the Tier 6 powerhouses of hegemonic powers would necessarily be assigned one, let alone someone with no background like Shifeng. Do you think I have to be Tier 5 to block your attacks? Shifeng responded nonchalantly. The superiority of Tier 5 players over Tier 4 players lies in reaction speed. Although Godslayer did not provide any bonuses to his basic attributes and physique, it drastically improved the strength of his mana and concentration standard. Before becoming a special lifeform, Shifeng could already gain Tier 5 mana and Tier 5 concentration, qualifying to fight a Tier 5 Demon King. Now that Shifeng had become a special lifeform, under the effects of Godslayer, his mana and concentration had reached a completely new level. He was far superior to Markless Blade, who had only reached the entry level of Tier 5 in these two aspects. Not to mention, Shifeng's strengthened mana also improved his world creation, which further weakened all enemy attacks within its range and boosted the power of his attacks. As for his concentration, which now reached the intermediate rank Tier 4 standard, it allowed him to manipulate his 9 frost swords with greater ease. This meant he could increase his performance with the frost swords. Moreover, Sword's orbit was inherently a defensive combat technique. Offense was never its strong suit, so it would naturally show better performance when he switched from using it offensively to defensively. Meanwhile, all these factors added together made it so that Markless Blade's spatial blades were not a threat to Shifeng. However, Godslayer only had a 30-second duration. Shifeng couldn't afford to let the battle drag on for too long. So, as soon as he finished speaking, he raised the Winter of Eternal Night in his hand and willed for 2 frost swords to follow suit. Immediately afterward, the 3 weapons devoured all mana within a 300-yard radius, causing the space of the affected area to freeze. Even though Markless Blade was equipped with a piece of Tier 5 magic equipment, the lack of mana in the area still caused him to feel a little uncomfortable and his movements to become sluggish. Before Markless Blade could adapt to this sudden change, the Winter of Eternal Night in Shifeng's hands and the 2 frost swords hovering next to him executed a downward slash that carried a hair-raising amount of power. Third sword, Holy Annihilation. 3 slashes fell toward Markless Blade simultaneously. From Markless Blade's perspective, it looked as if darkness was descending toward him, the descent of the darkness so quick that he couldn't evade it in time with his heavy body. All 3 of Shifeng's slashes carried power far greater than any of Shifeng's previous attacks. When Markless Blade saw the 3 slashes, he immediately understood that not even Tier 5 players should try to block them. He wouldn't even be surprised if just one of these slashes was enough to heavily injure a Tier 5 legendary monster. Tier 5 additional active skill, Mana Overflow. Tier 5 additional active skill, Eradicating Light. Markless Blade decided to use everything he had to defend against the 3 slashes. Immediately, he used his Tier 5 magic equipment's additional skills Mana Overflow and Eradicating Light. Mana Overflow doubled his mana volume and increased the effects of his skills and spells by 100%, whereas Eradicating Light enhanced one of his attacks with the mana destruction effect and increased the attack's strength by 200% and agility by 100%. Subsequently, Markless Blade's God Annihilator received the oncoming slashes one after another, each collision creating explosions that shook a radius of 1,000 yards. The land within the affected radius cracked and exploded, sending dust and dirt flying everywhere. After the first collision, Markless Blade's hands trembled. After the second collision, Markless Blade's posture broke, and he was forced to take 2 steps backward. His HP also fell by over 1/3 of its maximum. After the third collision, Markless Blade was sent flying 100 yards away, his body heavily injured and blood flowing out of the corner of his eyes. His HP also plummeted and hit 0 in the blink of an eye. Then, his large body fell powerlessly to the ground. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 326, Invincible Among Tier 4. Chapter 326, Invincible Among Tier 4 Silence. Whether it was the participants present or spectating players watching the live broadcast, everyone went silent when they saw Markless Blade's corpse gradually disintegrating and disappearing. After a short silence, though, the players watching the live broadcast exploded into activity. Markless Blade got defeated. Just like that. Markless Blade can already exhibit 100% of his Tier 5 magic equipment's effects, yet he still couldn't endure those 3 slashes. This Black Flame is a monster. If even Markless Blade lost to him, I think Black Flame has a good chance at competing for the top 3 spots. No wonder he dared to kill Unforgettable Leaf. I didn't think Markless Blade would be the first of the top 10 seeded players to get eliminated. This is truly a surprise. The Myriad Forest Empire's players were even touting how at least half of the top 10 spots would belong to people from their empire. They must be looking dying from embarrassment right now. Ha ha ha. 3 slashes to fell Markless Blade. With this, our kingdom is going to see the rise of another paragon. The Azura Sword Emperor, is it? Although it had been a long time since Markless Blade last made a public appearance, he was undoubtedly a paragon-level individual in the hearts of the ancient River Kingdoms and Myriad Forest Empire's players. Moreover, he was a paragon capable of ranking within the top 10 of the Myriad Forest Empire's younger generation paragons. Yet, now, Markless Blade had lost to Shifeng. This was a shocking outcome, especially for the ancient River Kingdoms players. They were all excited by this outcome. Subsequently, the name of the Azura Sword Emperor quickly spread, causing even more players to spectate Shifeng's fight through the 7 Luminaries Alliance's broadcast. The various kingdoms and empires often butt heads in the greater god's domain. It was especially so when a neutral resource node was involved. These fights usually required the paragons of the involved nation to take to the battlefield. Meanwhile, the more experts a country had, the greater the advantage it would have in battle. This was why the ruling powers of the various kingdoms and empires tended to curry favor with the various Tier 4 and Tier 5 paragons. These Tier 4 and Tier 5 paragons might not be a match for Tier 6 players in terms of actual combat power, but the value they could exhibit wouldn't be inferior to Tier 6 players in the slightest. The ancient River Kingdom had already been in a weak state for a long time. So, it was definitely a great joy for the kingdom for a new paragon to appear in its territory. Because of this unexpected development, the number of people spectating the broadcast of Shifeng's battle had also gone up from 400,000 to over 1 million. Moreover, this number was still rapidly increasing as time passed, the broadcast's viewership quickly catching up to the broadcast of famous Tier 6 experts. While the spectating players were holding their respective discussions, the members of Glorious Mantras, Martial Quadbeasts, and Silent Saintesses parties revealed very ugly expressions. In addition to fear, their faces also expressed a hint of anger. They had a joint deal with Markless Blade. It was why they had helped Markless Bad in the first place. Now that Markless Blade had died, their deal with Markless Blade to enter the top 20 together naturally became worthless. This meant that getting into the top 20 would become a big problem now. The Galaxy conglomerate would rarely hold invitational competitions, the last one being several decades ago. If they wished to avoid the challenge of getting into the official phase of the invitational competition, the best way would be to get into the top 20 of the ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition. If they couldn't enter the rookie competition's top 20, they'd have to face intense competition between countless experts originating from the various kingdoms and empires. Moreover, at that time, the experts they needed to face wouldn't be limited to those from the younger generation. Many older generation experts would also be competing. After all, the Galaxy conglomerate had set the age limit for its invitational competition this time at 35. This meant paragons like Markless Blade, who were close to reaching the age limit, would join as well. For the sake of giving the younger generation a chance, most hegemonic powers had refrained from sending their veteran paragons to participate in the ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition this time. According to the information they received, there were still over 50 older generation paragons in the rookie competition. Indeed, over 50 veteran paragons were in the rookie competition. These veteran paragons had already lingered at Tier 4 for a long time. They were vastly superior to the younger generation paragons when it came to the development of their mana bodies, the weapons and equipment they possessed, and the skills, spells, mana techniques, and combat techniques they had mastered. Because of the presence of these veteran paragons, It was no exaggeration to say that the difficulty of getting into the rookie competition's top 20 this time was much greater than getting into the top 10 of the Myriad Forest Empire's Battle of Geniuses. However, before the three parties could think about how they should compete for the top 20, Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintus suddenly felt Shifeng's gaze on them. This instantly put a lot of pressure on them. Black Flame, we won't stop you anymore now that you've defeated Markless Blade. Why don't we each go on our separate ways? Martial Quad Beast, the oldest of the three paragons, took the initiative to suggest. This will be good for all of us. I'm sure you don't want to miss out on the Galaxy Conglomerate's Invitational Competition, right? The Galaxy Conglomerate's Invitational Competitions come only once every several decades. You might have defeated Markless Blade, but I doubt you are currently in good shape. If we fight, we will only be benefiting the other parties. So, why bother? Glorious Mantra chimed in. Shifeng might have killed Markless Blade, but anyone could tell that his complexion looked a lot paler than before. It was obvious that Shifeng's victory over Markless Blade wasn't as easy as it seemed. So, it definitely wouldn't be wise for Shifeng to fight the three of them now. The three of them definitely weren't a match for Markless Blade in a 1-versus-1 situation. However, if the three of them worked together, even Markless Blade would have to flee. Although Shifeng was stronger than Markless Blade, they were confident they could win against Shifeng in his currently exhausted state. When Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao heard Martial Quadbeast's and Glorious Mantra's words, they couldn't help but sigh in relief. If the three parties were to work together to attack Shifeng, it would definitely be disastrous for Shifeng now that he had already revealed all of his cards. Fortunately, the 3 slashes Shifeng had used to kill Markless Blade were enough to deter the three parties from escalating the situation. Go on our separate ways. Shifeng looked at the three paragons for a moment. Then, he swung his sword and sent 3 slashes flying at them, saying, "Who do you think you are?" When the 3 paragons saw the 3 holy annihilations rapidly approaching them, they mentally cursed at Shifeng before using their respective trump cards, none of them daring to hold back. Immediately, Martial Quad Beast summoned a Tier 4 mythic-ranked Titan Behemoth to defend him. Glorious Mantra waved his staff and transformed into a cloud of dark fog, and Silent Saintus formed over 20 magic barriers before her. Boom! After the 3 pitch-black sword lights hit their mark, apart from Martial Quad Beast, who had nearly half of his HP remaining, Glorious Mantra and Silent Saintus had hardly any HP remaining. On top of that, the 3 paragons were alone now as all of their party members were devoured by the pitch-black sword lights. This scene dumbfounded the players spectating the battle's broadcast. How is this possible? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3253, Chapter 327, Kingdom Shocked. Chapter 3253, Chapter 327, Kingdom Shocked. The Red Star Kingdom's Glorious Mantra, the Iron Lion Kingdom's Martial Quad Beast, the Myriad Forest Empire's Silent Saintus, Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintus were all paragons of the older generation. However, before they withdrew from the younger generation, they ranked among the top 10 of their respective countries' young paragons. Even back then, the 3 of them possessed strength rivaling the 10 great paragons of the current ancient river kingdom. It also went without saying that they were currently a lot stronger than they were before. While they might not be a match for Markless Blade, they were all potential contenders for the current rookie competition's top 20. Yet, now, Shifeng had essentially put all 3 of these veteran paragons on death's door using only 3 attacks. Moreover, he had even eradicated the 3 paragons' party members using the same 3 attacks. This development raised everyone's shock to a whole new level. In fact, this outcome was multiple times more shocking than when Shifeng killed Markless Blade in 3 attacks. Madness. This is madness. Black Flame is suppressing 3 veteran paragons all by himself. Could those 3 have regressed in strength? Impossible. The Titan Behemoth Martial Quad Beast summoned has defensive rivaling Tier 5 legendary monsters. A legendary monster's full-powered attack isn't even enough to kill the Titan Behemoth in one hit, let alone reach Martial Quad Beast and take half of his HP away. It's not just Martial Quad Beast. Some time ago, Silent Saintess's 24-layer defensive barrier kept her safe from a Tier 5 expert trying to assassinate her for over a dozen seconds. There's no way any of them has regressed in strength. The Darkness Transformation Glorious Mantra used just now is a Tier 4 super spell. When that spell is active, even legendary monsters will have difficulty damaging him. If that really is the case, isn't Black Flame a little too strong? We are talking about 3 paragons capable of ranking among the kingdom's 10 great paragons. Even Markless Blade will probably fall if he has to go up against all 3 of them simultaneously. The players spectating the broadcast engaged in a heated discussion when they saw the 3 veteran paragons getting heavily damaged. Some people have even analyzed exactly how powerful the skills and spells the 3 veteran paragons had used, and everyone realized just how frightening Shifeng's strength was. Back on the battlefield, Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess looked at Shifeng with shock and fear in their eyes. A saint-ranked mana technique. He's actually able to perfectly execute a saint-level mana technique? After experiencing Shifeng's attack, the trio instinctively thought of saint-ranked mana techniques. Previously, the 3 of them had been standing quite far away when Shifeng had killed Markless Blade with his 3 slashes, so they didn't realize exactly what kind of attack Shifeng had used to kill Markless Blade. However, after experiencing the same attack, they understood why Markless Blade was killed by those 3 slashes. Saint-ranked mana techniques were incredibly rare, even in the greater god's domain. Many ordinary hegemonic powers didn't even have one in their possession. The difficulty of learning saint-ranked mana techniques was also incredibly high. However, so long as a player could achieve perfect mastery over a saint-ranked mana technique, they could exhibit strength rivaling gold combat techniques when used at Tier 6. Currently, although Shifeng wasn't a Tier 6 player, he already had the standards of a Tier 5 player. The power he could exhibit with a perfected saint-ranked mana technique would be very close to a gold combat technique. So, even if Markless Blade was equipped with a piece of Tier 5 magic equipment, it wasn't a shame for him to lose to Shifeng. In fact, his defeat was inevitable. This was because any player who had mastered a gold combat technique could transcend tiers even without the help of a legendary weapon. They were existences who could stand at the greater god's domain's apex. Without a legendary weapon or equipment of his own, how was Markless Blade supposed to stand up against Shifeng? Retreat. It's impossible for the 3 of us to beat him, Martial Quad Beast said as he looked at Glorious Mantra and Silent Saintess. Immediately afterward, he took out a Tier 4 instantaneous movement scroll, used it, and reappeared at a location several thousand yards away. He dared not stay near Shifeng for even a moment longer. As for Glorious Mantra and Silent Saintess, they had similarly used their precious tools and vanished from Shifeng's sight. They're gone, just like that. Midsummer was momentarily stunned when she saw the 3 veteran paragons disappearing. She couldn't believe that these usually lofty individuals would run away without even trying to put up a fight. As for the players spectating the broadcast, they gaped in shock at this scene. These were 3 10 great paragon-level individuals they were talking about. Yet, these 3 veteran paragons had fled without trying to resist even in the slightest. This situation had never happened in the ancient River Kingdom or the neighboring kingdoms. It should be known that Martial Quad Beast and the others had only passively defended themselves before. They had never truly worked together to attack Shifeng. If they joined forces, they could absolutely exhibit incredible combat power. Yet, the 3 veteran paragons had fled in a panic after receiving only 1 slash each from Shifeng. Shifeng, though, wasn't surprised by this outcome. On the contrary, he felt that the 3 veteran paragons' reaction was only a matter of course. One would have difficulty perceiving Holy Annihilation's power without experiencing it directly. Meanwhile, Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess were all paragons with a fountain of combat experience. So, after experiencing Holy Annihilation, it wouldn't be difficult for them to recognize it as a saint-ranked mana technique. It was true that, unlike gold combat techniques, saint-ranked mana techniques couldn't show their full potential at lower tiers. Even so, Any Tier 4 or Tier 5 player who had managed to fully master a Saint-ranked mana technique would still be invincible among players of the same tier. Combining this with the fact that the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition provided a significantly easier way to participate in the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition, it was only natural that Martial Quad Beast and the others refused to die so early into the rookie competition's official phase. Subsequently, news of Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess getting scared away quickly spread like wildfire. When the Ancient River Kingdom's various powers learned about this outcome, they promptly recorded him in the list of paragons who were based in the kingdom. At the same time, they began frantically looking into Shifeng's identity and all other information related to him. Not only did Shifeng defeat Markless Blade, but he also frightened 3 top-tier paragons into running away. It had already been several decades since any paragon in the Ancient River Kingdom had accomplished such a feat. Even Saint 3, a paragon the Twin Saints Alliance touted to be a once-in-a-century genius, did not have such a dazzling achievement. If they could win over such a paragon, it would be of great help to their development in the future. At the same time, in the Ancient River Secret Land's central zone, a 2-man party finally defeated a wandering Tier 4 heroic spirit after fighting continuously for nearly half an hour. Then, this 2-man party began to move as covertly as possible around the central zone, afraid of getting ambushed by other parties. Damn it! Why are there so many veteran paragons in the rookie competition this time? Lightning Chaser cursed under his breath, his face colored with anger as he looked at a 3-man party walking away from his hiding spot. Every party we've met thus far has at least 2 or 3 paragons. How are we supposed to even kill any heroic spirits with those people wandering around? It can't be helped. The Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition is a rare event that only occurs once every several decades. Nobody will want to miss such a big opportunity, Desolate Fury said, sighing. Among the remaining parties, I'm afraid we are the weakest. Now, all we can do is move around covertly and figure out a way to kill as many heroic spirits as possible. We'll only be asking to get eliminated if we make any bold moves. The weakest. When Lightning Chaser recalled how Shifeng had become famous throughout the Ancient River Kingdom, he couldn't help but envy Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao. Now that Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao had Shifeng protecting them, the central zone was no different from their backyard. Even parties with 3 or 4 paragons would have to make way when they come across Shifeng's party. It's pointless to start regretting now, Desolate Fury said. When he saw the flash of envy appearing in Lightning Chaser's eyes, he could more or less guess what was going through the other party's mind. If you hadn't deliberately antagonized Black Flame, we might have been able to partner with him in the central zone. But now, don't even think about it. So what if he's strong? With Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao holding him back, he won't necessarily make it into the top 20, Lightning Chaser said, curling his lips. Moreover, now that he's offended Heavenly Boa, there's no way Heavenly Boa will let him off easily. Perhaps. Desolate Fury did not refute Lightning Chaser's words. Instead, he bitterly smiled and said, but according to the latest information the Alliance sent me, the names of the Ancient River Kingdom's 10 great paragons have already been changed, and coming in first is Black Flame. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 328, First Paragon. Chapter 328, First Paragon. First. Lightning Chaser forgot to breathe when he heard Desolate Fury's words. Impossible. The Ancient River Kingdom might have been in a weak state for many years already, but those capable of ranking among the top 10 of the kingdom's younger generation paragons were all extraordinary individuals. Even a peerless genius like Desolate Fury would be swiftly killed if he tried to fight any of the Ancient River Kingdom's 10 great paragons in a one-on-one duel. More importantly, it had already been a long time since the Ancient River Kingdom had officially crowned the title of First Paragon to anyone. Even a paragon as powerful as Saint 3 was only known as one of the Ancient River Kingdom's top 3 paragons. A specific ranking for the top 3 paragons did not exist in the Ancient River Kingdom. Yet, now, Shifeng was given the title of First Paragon after only one battle. No matter how Lightning Chaser looked at it, this news must be a joke. It should be known that when a kingdom decided to crown a player as its first paragon, it meant that this player possessed the highest combat power out of all Tier 4 players operating within the kingdom. This player would become an expert that even the kingdom's various hegemonic powers would have to treat respectfully. During kingdom wars, this player would also wield considerable authority and the right to select participants for the war. It was no exaggeration to say that a kingdom's first paragon was an important individual who could decide the direction of the kingdom's development. Although Shifeng had indeed slain Markless Blade and repelled 3 veteran paragons, his achievements should only be enough to get him recognized as one of the ancient River Kingdom's top 3 paragons. It didn't make sense that he would be designated the position of first paragon. It's a logical decision for the ancient River Kingdom to regard him as its first paragon. When Desolate Fury saw that Lightning Chaser refused to believe his words, he explained, according to the Alliance's investigative report, Black Flame has perfect mastery over a saint-ranked mana technique. This factor alone is more than enough to qualify him for the position of the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon. Lightning Chaser thoroughly fell silent when he heard the mention of a saint-ranked mana technique. At this time, he even started to feel a little fearful. The achievement of perfectly mastering a saint-ranked mana technique was far more frightening than becoming the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon. Even the various conglomerates would extend an olive branch to Shifeng once they learned about this achievement. If the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon represented the peak of a kingdom's genius, the perfect mastery of a saint-ranked mana technique represented the future birth of an apex powerhouse in God's domain. With such an achievement under Shifeng's belt, even the Heavenly Boa Guild would come to fear him, let alone Saint 3. Suddenly, Lightning Chaser's face twisted with expressions of regret and madness. Why? Why did things turn out like this? Even though Lightning Chaser had already become an official successor of the Extreme Eagle Corporation, he still wasn't certain whether he could become first in the line of succession in the future. So, it was crucial for him to form as many connections with powerful experts as possible. Yet, now, he had actually cast aside the opportunity to get acquainted with a future apex powerhouse. While Lightning Chaser was mired in regret, Shifeng, Midsummer, and Wu Xiaoxiao finished killing off 2 Tier 4 heroic spirits in a small forest and stopped in front of a 6-meter-tall steely. The two of you are elementalists, so the mana technique recorded on this steely suits you perfectly. With our current damage output, it'll be tough for us to collect enough heroic spirit remnants in 3 days. It just so happens that we've collected 6 heroic spirit remnants, so you two can use them to learn the mana technique on this steely. So long as you can learn the mana technique, our party will have a much easier time moving forward, Shifeng said as he pointed at the dilapidated steely in front of him. A mana technique that suits us? Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao couldn't help but look at the dilapidated steely before them strangely and worriedly. If it was a mana technique suitable for magical class experts, it was most likely one that could provide a huge boost in combat power. However, the ancient steely before them was clearly much more damaged than any other steely they had come across. In the ancient River Secret Land's central zone, the more dilapidated a steely was, the more difficult it would be to learn the mana technique recorded on it. Meanwhile, as long as they failed to learn the mana technique within a specified time, they would automatically forget what they've learned, wasting precious time they could have spent collecting heroic spirit remnants. Don't worry. The mana technique recorded on this steely isn't particularly complex. It's only a god-ranked mana technique. With your mastery over mana, you two should have no trouble learning it within the allotted time, Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw the worry on Midsummer's and Wu Xiaoxiao's faces. Moreover, I have some matters I need to deal with offline. Since you two aren't going to log out, you might as well use this time to learn the mana technique here. It's only a god-ranked mana technique. Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao felt relieved when they heard Shifeng's words. Immediately, they took out the heroic spirit remnants they had collected and contributed them to the dilapidated steely. Many of the mana techniques recorded in the Central Zone's ancient steelies were saint-ranked mana techniques, and it was nigh impossible for players to learn them within the allotted time. However, it was a different story for god-ranked mana techniques. It was entirely possible for players to learn a god-ranked mana technique within the allotted time. In fact, One of the main reasons many geniuses sought to enter the rookie competition's top 100 was so that they could learn a god-ranked mana technique. When Shifeng saw the two girls starting their learning process, he called up his system interface and chose to log out of the game. There were no heroic spirits in the area. By now, everyone also knew that he and his party were active around these parts. So, hardly any parties were willing to come close to this area, and the two could study with ease. As for the mana technique the two were learning, there was something he had neglected to tell them. It was true that the mana technique recorded on dilapidated stele was only at the god rank. However, it wasn't just any ordinary god-ranked mana technique. Instead, it was the mana cohesion method created by the god of 4 elements, one of the 12 great gods in God's domain. So long as Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao could learn the mana cohesion method, they could elevate the density of their mana to a whole new level. They could condense gaseous mana into liquid mana and liquid mana into solid mana. They could even use 7 luminaries crystals to amplify their spells, strengthening the power of an ordinary spell to the level of a super spell of the same tier. Because of the mana cohesion method's incredible effects, it was also one of the most complicated god-ranked mana techniques to learn. During Shifeng's previous life, a Tier 4 expert over 100 years of age had learned the mana cohesion method. With the mana technique's assistance, he had become a dangerous individual known throughout the Starlight Realm. Sometime later, he had even joined the Apex Power Demon's Gate. Honestly, Shifeng was mostly trying his luck by getting Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao to learn the mana cohesion method. He didn't have high hopes for them to succeed. As for why he chose to take such a gamble, it was because he truly had matters he needed to tend to in the real world. Gentle Snow and Hidden Soul would be arriving in the greater world today, so he needed to get their living arrangements sorted out. Hence, he decided he might as well have Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao try to improve their strength as much as possible. If they succeeded in learning the mana cohesion method, they would have a much easier time killing heroic spirits and collecting heroic spirit remnants afterward. Greater World, Star Lake City, God's Domain Association. Inside a crowded advanced training room, 1,000 Scars walked out of a test room after conducting numerous rounds of reaction training, an exhausted look on her face. However, when she saw the results of her final training round, the corners of her lips curled upward. Mental grade, 3-star mental strength master, age, 19, overall evaluation, S. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,